Myself, Sello Mokwidiri. We're in the back end of the show, and we're going to be wrapping it up with a very, very important conversation with Sello Hatang, the executive director of Hata Mmoho. Just remember, you've been warned. Lights, camera, now you're on. Those haunting lyrics borrowed from Deborah Cox and Whitney Houston are more than just a soulful melody. They are a warning, a prophecy maybe, and in the hands of today's guest, they've become a searing metaphor for global politics and Western hypocrisy. In his latest essay titled "Same Script, Different Cast," Sello Hatang, the executive director of Hata Mmoho, delivers a sobering reflection on how war, distraction, and double standards are repeated with chilling familiarity. From Iraq and Libya to Gaza, Iran, and beyond, his central point: the so called liberators of the world have simply changed outfits, but never their roles. And while Western leaders get red carpets and keynote slots, those who challenge the status quo, especially from the global south, our part of the woods, our part of the world, get drone strikes, get sanctions, and get silence. And as bombs fall, lives are lost and democracies unravel. We're told it's all in the name of freedom. A story that we've had so many times. And joining us now to reflect on why history keeps repeating itself and whether the global south can ever write a new script is Sello Hatang. Sello, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to Salam Media. Really appreciate you giving us your time this morning.
Thank you so much. Good morning.
I think we can kickstart the conversation with, your piece. It begins with a song, but quickly unfolds into a very, very powerful political reckoning. What triggered this reflection for you, and most importantly, why now?
Look, throughout history, we have moments where things are repeated, but we are so forgetful as a people that we don't recognize them for what they are. This is just not South African thing; it's globally. We forget so quickly that we were here in 2003. We were here when we were told that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. This, despite the fact that the IAEA said there's no such. Colin Powell was on a roadshow, moving from one channel to another to explain to the world that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. We then moved on from there. We moved on to when Gaddafi was killed, and in that moment again, to date, I still don't know what Gaddafi did wrong, except for being a dictator. He was never able to be taken to any court. He was never prosecuted for his wrong. And we are back there where people just get to lose their lives because they differ with somebody. And therefore, democracy will be delivered. And when democracy is not delivered, you are left with chaos. Those people who left you with chaos are nowhere to be found. Today, you find Gaddafi's land, which used to have medical care that was free for all, used to have free education for all those benefits gone. Instead, Africans are being enslaved in his country today. And I think as I was sitting there in the morning, trying to make sense of what's happening, this song came to mind. That what we have is same script, just different acts. The actors just change, but the script is the same. Two words that will haunt us forever is terrorism and weapons of mass destruction. Those two phrases will haunt us forever because that's all. It's a scarecrow that's used to ensure that we just capitulate and someone is attacked with no legitimacy at all that they can attacked, and yet there's no reason. So that's what brought about this piece.
I want to touch on, I think, an important point that you keep reiterating. You speak about same script, different cast. Then the question would be, who do you think is writing this script, and why does the world keep falling for it over and over again?
Look, the writers remain the same. So I give the example of two of the authors of this script. The West is the one that determines the direction of the global community, and the West is the one that determines who has peace and who doesn't.
Hmm.
The moment you differ with the West in any way, as an individual, you lose some benefits, but as countries, you lose even more. So I think I gave two examples of such actors. 2003 convinced us that Iraq needed to fall. Today, Tony Blair and George W. Bush are giving international speeches. They are known to be uh, global statesmen. When we know they've committed such crimes that cannot easily be forgotten. But because they were leaders of countries that are respected, that are held in high regard, then people just forget about what they did. Instead, they continue to hold them in high regard. And I think the writers of the script are those who dominate the world. They dominate the Security Council. If they want you to go down, you go down, using legitimate instruments of power, and you will go down. So I think the actors are the same. The script writers are the same. And the only thing that we need to be asking ourselves is the second part of your question. Why does the world fall for it? The world doesn't. In fact, in most instances, the world feels disempowered to do anything about it, even though they can see the script for what it is. But the world feels disempowered to do anything. I don't know why, by the way, because the UN again has come out in this instance to say something is wrong. International law is not being followed. But do you think they will listen?
Well, definitely not if you consider, what we've seen unfold in the last few years. I want to touch on a point that you made. You draw a stark contrast between how Western leaders, the one that you mentioned, are from these respected nations in the West, and how they've led devastating wars across the global South. You mentioned characters like Bush and Tony Blair. They are celebrated, they are lauded, they are keynote speakers in very, very important events, while African leaders are quickly dragged to the ICC. What does this say about global justice generally, and whose lives are seen as grievable?
Look, I think part of the problem is that you have Mmoho Ibrahim, who was hosting an international conference recently. And he reminded us of something that I don't know if the listeners know this, but of the people who are dying today, in whether it be in Sudan, in the DRC, in other parts of Mali, in other parts of the continent, there are more people dying on this continent daily than in all the conflicts that you find around the world combined. I want to repeat that these conflicts do not necessarily mean that the lives of those who are dying in those countries are treated the same. So, we know that the lives of Africans are then seen as sub lives, and below them, there's nothing else that's left, but it's just us who need to then be saving ourselves. I think if you were to look at how African leaders are treated, and how with the use of the ICC has just declared that Netanyahu, for example, is a war criminal. And do you think he would be arrested when he gets to the U.S.? No. He just went to the U.S. with no issues at all. So I think we need to reckon with that, to say that's where the world finds itself, unfortunately. And there's little or nothing that we can do except to just keep making noise to say we see it for what it is, and it's not just. There's no justice at all in it.
Mm, mm, mm. Um, you mentioned Libya and Iraq and the assassination logic now being floated to some of Iran's leaders. Why do you think the West particularly continues to pursue regime change without accountability for the aftermath? I think the word regime change was mentioned so many times by Benjamin Netanyahu and Donald Trump in these last 12 days when it comes to Iran, to a point where we never really questioned it. We never said, hey, how can you want to influence regime change in a sovereign country and do it in such a manner? I mean, it's just mind-boggling, that things that are considered illegal by international norms, legal norms and standards are, just left to be if certain individuals utter them.
Change has never been effective anywhere in the world. If you look at what happened in Libya, the West wanted to change there. The Libyan leader was killed, and then what happened? It's still in chaos.
Mm.
You go to Iraq, similarly. Saddam Hussein was removed, and regime change affected West Iraq today. And I think everywhere where this regime change is touted, it has proven over and over that it never worked. So I still don't understand why we still have leaders who believe that by killing the head of the state, like was mooted this past week, that the supreme leader should be killed, and once you've killed the supreme leader, then you've solved problems of Iran. That has never helped. That has never worked anywhere in the world. It has never worked. Today you find DRC same with the difficulties that it has today because of the interference of the West and how Lumumba was killed, Sankara was killed. And you find those countries taking a long time before they recover fully from that killing of a leader who cared about their country. And I think it's about time that we reckon with that, to say this regime change has never worked anywhere, and it doesn't. It's not about to work today.
Mm, mm, mm. You end your essay with a very, very hopeful line. You mentioned, and I quote, "Let's rewrite the script." What would a written global script look like, and what small actions can we take now to begin that retake?
The written script would only be effective once you have a UN that's not controlled by the Big Five, that they have veto power, that they can veto anything that comes through. You change the international instrument of political power. You change all the instruments of economic power from the World Bank to IMF. You change those to favor those who are the downtrodden. We will then begin to have change. But for as long as those both economic and political instruments, international political and economic instruments, favor the West, favor the powerful, we are in. The second thing that we need to think about is what extent do we need to move as South Africa particularly, but as the global community, from idolizing the West and colonizers to rethinking and rebuilding our countries free of corruption. And I emphasize, free of corruption, free of all other.
All right, we seem to have a, yes.
That they benefit their own people. So that's what we need to be working towards. Until such time that we get that right, unfortunately, we will still be having these conversations in the next 20 years, and our children's children will continue to have those conversations.
And that would be an unfortunate state of affairs. Sello, thank you so much for joining us. Really, really appreciate you giving us your time this morning. And yeah, thoroughly enjoyed this insightful conversation. Have you published the essay? Where can people read it? Where can people find it?
It's in City Press. So if you go to there.
All right, there you go. Sello Hatang, thank you so much for joining us. We've come to the end of
Thank
this
you.
conversation, and we've come to the end of the show. Thank you. Thank you so much for staying with us for the past 2 hours and 6 minutes. We've come to the end of the Thursday edition of News and Views. It's been another insightful one, another educational one. And Night Wadi will be back with you again tomorrow for the Juma Friday edition of the show. So yeah, there's going to be some really, really wonderful conversations that are going to be heard tomorrow. But yeah, today there's a new podcast series that we'll be launching. It's called the Lens 70. It's a podcast series which is going to focus on the Lenasia area here in the south of Johannesburg. It's a region that's very, very rich with history. It has some really, really incredible individuals that have come out of it, and some of them still residing there. And yeah, we'll be focusing on that, the history of Lenasia, some of its attractions, and the role that it has played in the broader history of South Africa. And yeah, it will be live at 11 a.m. right until 1 p.m. Central African time, and it will be hosted by the experienced, seasoned broadcaster Najma Kota. So if you are in Lens, or people in Lens, your family around Lens, there's a podcast series that you definitely need to keep an eye out for. It's going to be a really, really wonderful one. It's very, very historic, and I'm really excited for it. I'll be listening closely because, well, I love old things, and I love history, and I love reflecting on different aspects of South African history, and different elements of how and where we find ourselves today, what brought us to this point. And the Lens 70 podcast series is definitely one that I think will be a wonderful listen, a wonderful piece that you'd want to interact with. So it's coming up at 11. Najma Kota will be the host of the Lens 7 podcast series. And yeah, enjoy it, watch it, interact with it, tell us what you think about it. And maybe it could be a start. We could be coming to other various different towns, historic towns and regions here in South Africa that have played a very, very important role in our liberation and are part and parcel of the history of this wonderful country that we call home. But for now, going to leave it here from myself, Selalo Makwidiri, and the rest of the team. We'll see you again on Tuesday for the Tuesday edition of News and Views. Otherwise, sharp, sharp.